Hey everyone, Matt here again. So I'm just shooting this video as an addendum to my previous video, which was Horrors in the NDIS Part 3. So, it's actually a lot worse at Henny's Health Group than I described. Now, in the first video I mentioned the corporate religion, Henny's Health Group and the corporate religion. Um, the way these organizations work is that structurally everything's based on bonuses. So if you do more work than your billable target, which was something like I can't remember, it was close to 6 hours, which is more than you think, because a lot of the work you do doesn't end up being billable. So there's always an incentive to find a way to make any kind of contact you have with a client or any work you do billable. Not just so you can hit that KPI, but because you can get the bonus after it. And your boss also gets a bonus, and your boss's boss gets a bonus, but if their targets get exceeded as well. So it ends up being sort of a little bit like a pyramid scheme. In fact, that's the general consensus amongst psychologists in the industry who haven't grown up in this kind of corporate culture. People who are used to working in private practice or have grown up working in government, they see it and they're just like, what the hell? Like, this is crazy. But because the industry tends to train a lot of provisional psychologists, and this is one of the benefits of having them around, this is the one useful thing they're good for. And I say that debatably because the people who are trained in these institutions, they don't understand how perverse it is. There are benefits to being trained in these institutions because you get grounded in corporate culture and you're not as separated from regular society as people who go straight from doing their clinical masters and then going into private practice and not having worked in industry. Although as more and more mature students enter the field, that's becoming less of a concern. Returning to my point. So it's quite perverse. There's always an incentive to find things to bill for and to take more money from people's plans. Now, the ultimate metric, which is the most useful thing when we're talking about healthcare interventions in a social sense, when we're designing policy, is how to turn money from the government into results for the community. This process is not successful when the government interacts with companies which use this corporate model. At the social level of analysis, when we're talking about things like corporate culture and ideology, what was happening at Henny's Health Group is that your virtue and your worth to your company and to the people around in your network and your status was based on how much you were billing. Now, this is dangerous because it separated people from the actual mission of healthcare, which is to heal the sick. Who would have thought? To get people living worthwhile lives. Like, that seems like a good goal for the discipline of psychology, if in the sense of healthcare, and we got completely separated from that. When I say we, I mean the organization. And it's not just Henny's Health Group. Many healthcare companies, many NDIS companies use similar strategies. It's something which was co-opted from another insurance institution, vocational rehabilitation. So the classic example, which I'm going to do a video on in the near future, is an organization called Occupation Rehabilitation Services, who kind of historically laid the groundwork for what's happening now in the NDIS. Now, when we have these, when we apply this business model, it just sucks money from whoever is paying. Now, in vocational rehabilitation, when I do a video on that kind of makes sense, right, from a business perspective, because it does lead to a reduction in the overall, arguably leads to an overall reduction in the cost of expenditure. It doesn't in the NDIS. And what happens at Henny's Health Group is a textbook example of this corporate religion and this corporate ideology, where all the people end up behaving in this very capitalist, this fetishistically capitalistic way, this ideologically capitalistic way, where your money and how much money you gets transmuted into virtue, because each dollar you make in their minds is symbolic of work you have done to improve the lives of people in the community, but that's not what that number represents. That number is just money, right? They become completely separate. They are no longer, it's not representative of works. The discipline of clinical psychology has spent much time describing and designing measures for how we measure like the reduction in symptoms, or the positive psychologists who have come around now, how we describe improvement in livelihood. And this corporate culture separates healthcare professionals from the missions of their disciplines and gets them lost in the fuzz of bureaucracy and corporate culture and the religion and ideology which is associated with it. And Henny's Health Group is a perfect example of that. I wanted to communicate this as an addendum to my video, and I hope that the suffering that I have endured is indicative, well, not just indicative, is a communication to the healthcare community and the community outside healthcare, the people who are meant to be beneficiaries of healthcare and all the money which was spent by the government in training us, in subsidizing our university degrees and our training. That, you know, this system needs to change. It needs to be understood, and I think people coming into the field need to learn what the lessons which I have learned, and this needs to be communicated throughout our community. All right, that's the end of this video. Have a good one.